we're signing a health care plan within 2 weeks, a full and complete health care plan. We're going to be introducing a tremendous health care plan sometime hopefully prior to the end of the month. It's just about completed now. Over the next 2 weeks, I'll be pursuing a major executive order requiring health insurance companies to cover all pre-existing conditions for all customers.
You told Chris Wallace that this summer would come in 3 weeks. You promised an executive order on pre-existing.
I have it already.
The president will be laying out some additional healthcare steps in the coming, I would say, 2 weeks.
This is all very exciting. This is all very exciting. I mean, because, since Barack Obama started talking about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, my friend, Republicans have not put forward a single health care plan as a party.
Right.
So there has been no effort until this president. And we just heard those assurances that the health care plan it's coming out in 2 weeks. The health care, it's done. And so, Mika, today, it must be the day. But to a bigger point, because I know you were saying, okay, that's one thing. But what's Joe's bigger point here?
Really
Look, Willie's thinking that question.
Nope.
He's like, what's always Joe's bigger point?
Oh, great.
This is like all the conspiracy theories. Hey, the world's coming to an end next week, and then it doesn't come to an end, and then something else is happening next week. And then a good friend of ours has a friend who is caught up in all the conspiracy theories. And now the new conspiracy theory is Joe Biden is going to move back to Delaware on the 21st of January. And he's going to basically turn the government over to AOC and everybody. And there are educated people who believe this. There are former elected officials of large cities who believe this, and they're always made a fool of because these conspiracy theories never come true. And that was Donald Trump's whole presidency. David Brooks has this incredible article, this incredible column talking about evangelicals. The evangelical community split in half because people believed the lies for 4 years, and only now are half the church waking up to the fact that they have been lied to repeatedly by someone that they have set up as an idol. And so these lies, they are, it's not a bug. It's been a feature of the Trump presidency, Mika. And these lies, like all of his other lies, again, in the light of day, are proven to be lies.
Yeah, absolutely zero health care plan. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, January 19th. Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have White House reporter for the Associated Press, Jonathan Lemire, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst, Eugene Robinson.
So, Willie, there was a column this weekend, not exactly sure who it was, maybe you can remind me, of somebody who said how humiliating it was to be a Trump follower, how humiliating it was to be a QAnon follower, because your entire life is spent telling people of an event that's coming, a cataclysmic event, and then it never comes. And you're humiliated. And then you have to talk about the next end of the world moment, and those never come as well. That was Donald Trump's presidency.
Well, NBC's Ben Collins, who we're going to have on the show in a minute, has been writing about that for a long time. Yeah. It was Ben. Yeah. So there are dates circled on the calendar, and January 6th was one of them. January 20th, tomorrow, the inauguration, is the next one, when the political and cultural rapture is supposed to happen, and then it doesn't happen. And then it gets kicked down the road and a new date is proposed. And at some point, you would think some people might catch on. And I think some have, and Ben is going to talk about that. But you're so right about the health care plan that was never going to be there. And the wall is the most glaring example of what you're talking about. That was the basis of his entire campaign. Build that wall. Mexico's going to pay for it. It started when he came down the escalator in June of 2015. He will leave office at noon tomorrow with about 12 to 15 miles of new wall built on a 2,000-mile border. That was a lie.
That people can climb over.
Exactly. He went down there last week and autographed a piece of the wall to continue and to reinforce the lie and say, look, I actually did it. I'm leaving office. Promises made, promises kept. There's no wall. There's no health care plan. It was all a big branding exercise. And by and large, to get him into office, it worked.
Gene, we have lived our entire adult lives, Gene, you and I and most other people watching this show, understanding that if politicians make promises and they break those promises, they are held into account, even the smallest promise. I remember Barack Obama said in 2009, I think, if you want your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That ended up not being true. Republicans pounded him for that. Yeah. You know, in all cases, ended up being true in all cases. Let me be accurate there. In all cases, Republicans pounded him on that for 11 years. Donald Trump has lied repeatedly. He said he was going to pay off not just the deficit, he was going to pay off the federal debt. He promised universal health care for everybody. He promised he was going to build a wall in Mexico. I could go on, but he lies to them every week. And it's not like, oh, well, you're just saying that because, you know, you're a conservative, Joe, but you're on MSNBC. No, we've got the videotape. We've got the videotape, Gene. And they've got the videotape, but I guess this is what it's like being in a cult.
That's what it looks like to me. I mean, look, maybe that healthcare plan is coming tomorrow morning at the big send-off, right? I mean, you know, maybe that's what he's going to announce, but I kind of doubt it. He never intended to put out a healthcare plan, not in 2 weeks, not in 2 years, not in 200 years. And it was lie after lie after lie after lie. And we have chronicled those lies, right? I mean, we heard them in real time, said, this is not going to happen. Yet the people who wanted to believe it, believed it. And they went seamlessly to the next lie. And that is difficult to understand. It is difficult to understand the degree of alienation, and it's really like alienation from reality that causes this sort of blind, literally blind, deaf, dumb, and blind allegiance to an inveterate liar. To a politician, to a man who lies the way other people breathe. And, you know, you have to know that because you've experienced it over and over again, yet people kept coming back. And some people continue to come back. Now, maybe they will fall off as time goes on. We have to hope. We have to hope because reality has to win out. Reality has to win out over paranoid fantasy. It just has to.
Yeah. I mean, that really depends. If Donald Trump is a cult leader, then his sponsors over the past 4 years have been Facebook and Twitter.
That's right.
And so they take him off of Twitter, take him off of Facebook, and disinformation falls by 73%. Does that have an impact? Yes. That has an impact. So the big question is, will Facebook continue to propagate cult leaders on the right, and I'm sure they'll come on the left too. And if you don't think this isn't going to happen on the left, you are a fool. Yeah. You are a fool because that's the danger of Donald Trump. It's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump, listen, I know you're like, oh, Trumpism stays around for... No. That's not the danger to the Republic. The danger to the Republic is the people on the right, people on the left, people in the center, people who believe in nothing, have seen how easy it is to like break into American democracy and actually put it at risk. And they're thinking, you know, if Donald Trump weren't so stupid, that's what they're thinking. Not me, of course. I would never say that about any president. But they're thinking, if Donald Trump weren't so stupid, he actually could have pulled this off, right? That's what they're thinking. So it is up to you. It is up to me. It is up to Facebook. It is up to Twitter. It is up to all of us to make sure this never happens again. And yes, oh, Joe, you and Mika were responsible because you had him on a lot in 2015. Guilty. Awesome. Does that make you feel better? Okay, fine. Now focus with me, if you will. Because post 2015, Facebook and Twitter and Fox News and a lot of people carried that lie forward.
Going.
Day in and day out, day in and day out. The consequences devastating. By the way, over 400,000 of your Americans dead. More people than were killed in World War II. More people than were killed in World War I. Let's see. I'm not good in math, but about 7 times as many people who were killed in Vietnam. Let me say that again. More than 7 times the number of people who died in Vietnam have been killed by this virus that Donald Trump, in lying to you, ye old faithful member of the cult, said it was going to be one person coming in from China. Then it was going to go away. We got this hand.
And heck, put some bleach in your arm.
And then a month later, he said in Michigan, it's going to be 15 people. But soon it's going to be down to 0. We've done a very good job.
Right.
Then he started talking about putting bleach into your arm. Then he started talking about putting UV lights. Then he talked about hydroxychloroquine, or hell, I don't even remember what you call it now. I just know he talked about it every day. That ended up being a hoax, right? So here's this takeaway, okay? Don't think this was a one-time event, and don't think that this is about somebody on the far right wing, okay? Because Donald Trump's not far right wing. He doesn't give a damn about ideology. And that's what we have to be looking for in the future. You know, Jesus, it'd be great if so many people who called themselves evangelicals actually read the Bible. And this coming from a sinner. I've been divorced twice. I mean, Steve Largent called me a human highlight film for like sinning. I mean, it's like that's because I called him a human highlight film. Steve and I were roommates in Congress. But if they actually read the Bible, they would be knowledgeable of Jesus's warning: beware of false prophets. Cult members, with all heads bowed, with all eyes closed, whisper after me: beware of false prophets. You don't know where they're going to come from. Jesus warned us about that too. If you don't love Jesus, if you're saying, why is he talking about Jesus so much? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the cult members inside my church who have powered Donald Trump's presidency over the past 4 years. Stop reading QAnon sites and start reading the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we will be all right. Mika, that's my mini sermon for the 6 o'clock
I really
hour.
liked it. I would like to make a little point to one thing you said, and that is about Twitter and Facebook, who just right now ad hoc have decided to ban President Trump. And in at least Twitter, disinformation is down 70+%, showing just how damaging they have been letting him run rampant over the past 4 years. But banning Trump is not the issue, that they are not the people who can decide what can be out there and what can't. They are publishers.
They are publishers.
Okay.
They need to be recognized
and until you
as such.
are recognized as one and act like one, you're part of the problem, whether it's from the right or the left. And believe it or not, you're too blind to see it when it's coming, because it took you this long. It took you this long to even realize the damage that was being just promulgated and unfurled on your platforms, or you didn't care. I don't know which is worse.
Does anybody from the choir have anything to say? I see we got Jonathan Lemire. This is like romper room. We got Gene Robinson. Why don't we go to Jonathan Lemire? Jonathan, you know, we talk, you actually report. Why don't you tell us what's happening this last day, and what time this morning? Willie and I want to know, can we expect the sweeping health care reform package, because we have the over and under at 11:53 a.m.
Well, Joe, good morning. Let's start by underscoring exactly that. This is the last full day of Donald Trump's presidency. There is nothing on his public schedule, which, of course, has been the habit since Election Day, with only a few exceptions. We are anticipating a wave of pardons and clemencies to come out, likely later today, could be tomorrow morning. We think that's on the agenda, but otherwise, there's no health care plan in the offering. And I think that it should be underscored. This is obviously a presidency built on lies, from build the wall in the campaign through every 2 weeks he seemed to be promised the new health care plan. Also remember, of course, the caravan of immigrants that he touted in the 2018 midterms, a caravan that, of course, never materialized at the U.S. border. This is a president who one aide told me long ago would lie not to win that day's news cycle, but rather simply that news moment, to change one cable chyron, to generate one favorable tweet, it was so reflexive and impulsive, and it would leave aides to clean up the mess. Of course, the lie that he has told most consistently in the last 2.5, 3 months was about the election being rigged. And it was that lie that so many of these rioters who stormed the Capitol cite, and they say it was what the president said. The president inspired me to do this, to storm the Capitol, that cost lives, that damaged the very citadel of our democracy. And this is a presidency in its last now day and a half, still dealing with that, carefully watching the Senate to see where Mitch McConnell may go, what signals he may send about whether he will vote to convict and remove President Trump from office and potentially bar him from ever running again, something this president is very concerned about in terms of both his political relevancy and his ability to make money. He is slated to leave tomorrow morning. We know we'll see him then. Between now and then, we're not sure, but it's in some ways a fitting coda to this period of this presidency where he will stay out of sight and not do the basics of the job, which includes governing during a pandemic that has now claimed 400,000 of his fellow Americans.
God.
So, Jonathan, as you said, he's going to skip town tomorrow morning before the inauguration. Obviously not going to attend the inauguration. We've known that for some time. Not only not going to be there, but not going to perform the most basic moment that we've seen for years and years and years and years through administrations, which is to welcome the new president and first lady. The first lady, Melania Trump, won't be there to do that either. They'll be met, Joe Biden and Jill Biden, by the White House butler when they arrive there. Pardons, though, do remain on the table for these final 24 hours or so. Do we have a sense of how big he's going to go, how many he's going to give, and how low he will go?
Willie, it's still being worked out. There was a meeting yesterday with the White House counsel's office. This is a process that's largely staying outside of the typical DOJ channels. No firm decisions have been made, but we can report, and others have as well. The president is at this moment leaning against trying to self-pardon, trying to pardon himself, leaning against issuing blanket pardons for family members or aides, ones that may not have withstood legal challenges. And frankly, some aides were reluctant to accept because it would seem like an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Shelley Silver, former powerful New York figure, is one of the names being considered. Lil Wayne, another, the rapper, as well as others who came up through the Alice Johnson program, like her, where it is low-level drug offenders who are going to have their records expunged, those that criminal justice advocates will applaud. So we're expecting a mix of events, whether it be today or tomorrow. But you're right, there will be no welcome for the Bidens, no ceremonial tea. The Biden himself will do a lot of the duties on his own, where tomorrow he will journey with other former presidents, Bush, Obama, Clinton, to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery and lay a wreath. He will be inviting congressional leaders to Mass tomorrow morning in a church in Washington, not too far from the White House, as a symbolic olive branch to all members of the government. And of course, the President Trump will not be there at the west front of the Capitol as Joe Biden takes the oath of office under intense security challenges that we have only seen a few times before in the history of the country. 1945, when Franklin Roosevelt took the oath of office amid World War II. We certainly know Abraham Lincoln had to be snuck into the Capitol on a train when he was sworn in on the dawn of the Civil War. There's no moment, though, of national unity from our outgoing president, no touch of class whatsoever. And as a final point, Biden knows this idea of a lie. He knows that's one of the first tasks that he has to grapple with, is to restore the credibility of the office itself, repair how people both at home and abroad view the presidency, and make it so people, as he has told his aides, can believe the word of the president again.
Yeah, and the reason we're seeing that security is because of what happened, of course, on January 6th in that attack on the Capitol. We're learning much more about what happened that day. 4 members of the Capitol Police tell the Associated Press how they were left to hang out to dry. One officer said, "We were on our own." Other officers said they were given no warning by leadership about the possibility of an attack, even though Capitol Police reportedly had intelligence 3 days prior that the Capitol itself could be targeted. 3 officers also telling the AP the police chief, who has since resigned, was silent all afternoon. Later turned out for some of that time, he was sheltering in place with Vice President Mike Pence. 2 officers said the assistant chief, who's now the interim chief of Capitol Police, was heard on the radio telling officers to lock the building down with no further instructions. They also describe how they had to improvise after being overrun by the mob. Quoting again from the AP, one cop ran from one side of the building to another, fighting hand-to-hand against rioters. Another decided to respond to any calls of officers in distress and spent 3 hours helping cops who'd been immobilized by bear spray or other chemicals. 3 officers were able to handcuff one rioter, but a group swarmed that group and took the arrested man away with the handcuffs still on, Joe. So this is a case of something that we've been saying now for almost 2 weeks, that with each passing day, the events inside that Capitol seem to get worse with new information.
And Willie, look at these pictures. Let's go back to the pictures of these police officers being assaulted. And yes, we saw a few police officers who let people through the gates willingly, took pictures with them. They were the exception, not the rule. They were also the ones, of course, who have been suspended. But look at these pictures. This is what Donald Trump.
My God.
This is what Donald Trump ignited. And Willie, these are all people who blindly followed Donald Trump. Law and order. These people are for law and order. And you look at the fact that half of Donald Trump's supporters in America supported what went on. The chants about the cops, every bit as grotesque as what we heard in Portland or Seattle. And they're self-righteous about supporting cops, law and order. Of course, that's just another lie, Willie. These pictures, go back, don't show me. I'm ugly enough. Show pictures of these cops whose lives were on the line. Like these Trump people killing cops, assaulting cops. Willie, it's not extraordinary because we knew Donald Trump was a liar. It is extraordinary that his supporters, a vast majority of his supporters, are liars. And far from supporting men in blue, far from believing that blue lives matter, they actually did a full-on assault in the name of Donald Trump. And that is Donald Trump's legacy. That is their legacy, and that's the legacy of a vast majority of Donald Trump supporters. And all Donald Trump supporters who do not condemn him for this insurrection and do not condemn these rioters because they are one in the same.
There is no equivocating. They killed a police officer. They beat another officer to within an inch of his life with an American flag, with the flagpole. That man from Arkansas has been arrested. They tried to crush one man, an officer, inside a door. We've seen those pictures. He has recovered, thank God. So, yes, you can spare us back the blue from this group that was up on Capitol Hill on January the 6th. And those police officers, the more we hear about it, were improvising inside. They shouldn't have had to improvise. People knew this was coming. Intelligence knew this was coming. They should have been ready. Those brave officers were let down by their commanders. They were let down by their supervisors. And that will not happen again tomorrow based on the show of force that we've seen. Let's bring in senior video producer for opinions at the Washington Post, Kate Woodsom. She and her colleague Joy Sharon Yee reported from outside the Capitol on January 6th. Kate, good morning. So we want to watch some of your new video of what you witnessed as people marched from the president's rally to the Capitol when things quickly started getting out of control. Let's watch.
Make sure you get my face and everything on your news channel. I want the enemy to know exactly who's coming after them.
Oath breakers, we all used to back the blue, but now you're oath breakers, and we can't stand you.
The line of police that had been holding people back is essentially gone, and people have come all the way up to the Capitol wall and have climbed up and over it.
Your country back. Now's your time. Congress has already spoken. Now it's our
agency are y'all with? What news company are you with?
With the Washington Post.
With the Washington. Get the out of here. Yeah, get the out of here. Move your in your shit line. How many more people have to die? The lady died because of your line.
America is about to not be great again.
The speech the fake media didn't want you to know about is now available for download. Hasta la vista, America is Trump's farewell address. Well, it's Trump's farewell address, imagined by Kurt Anderson and performed by Alec Baldwin. Available exclusively at atrumpfarewell.com. It's just 99 cents.
Shouldn't we be charging more?
Hi, everyone. Steve Kornacki here. You may remember I hosted an NBC News podcast called Article 2, Inside Impeachment, that followed the developments of President Donald Trump's first impeachment last winter. The Article 2 podcast is back with a special episode, bringing you the latest on the second impeachment of Donald Trump. I'm joined by NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell, who was in the Capitol on the day of the riots to break down the House vote and what a Senate trial could look like. Search for Article 2, Inside Impeachment, wherever you're listening right now, to subscribe for free.
Kate, that's hard for me just to watch, and you're the one standing there. Describe what it was like to be there, knowing the anger that was in that crowd, knowing how they'd been whipped up by a lie to go into that building, and knowing that they've been told that the media is the enemy of the people and was partly responsible for this. What was it like to be there?
I mean, the word intense is kind of an understatement. It was a very precarious situation for everybody there, and particularly because, as you and everybody else has stated, so many people there so firmly believe that this election was stolen, and they see it almost as an existential threat to them and democracy, their version of democracy. And so we had people who were, breaking the sides into traitor and patriot, and we, the journalists and the police and even some of the EMTs who were wearing masks were considered traitors. And so when you're in a situation like that in the field, it's not just situational danger, you are a direct target. And so that was, to put it lightly, it was a stressful situation. And it grew increasingly dangerous after people breached the Capitol, because they were emboldened that, this crowd essentially had no personal responsibility, that they could get away with anything, and that they were emboldened by the president. They felt like they essentially had his mandate, and they also were emboldened by anti-government armed groups that have been training for a long, long time for what they think should be essentially a second revolution.
You stood in there and continued to report, and we have your video because of it. Gene Robinson, there was a telling moment in that piece of tape from Kate where the one man looked at police officers, a line of them, and said, "We used to back the blue, but you've broken your oath." The lie so powerful that it had those rioters turning on police.
Yeah, it's just incredible. These are the people who are supposed to support law and order. Blue lives matter. Well, apparently not. But to Kate, I just, first, I and all your colleagues want to thank you for your bravery, literal bravery under fire, and we're so glad that you're okay. We saw in that clip that some of the rioters wanted to yell at you, but as you engaged with them, did any of them want to actually talk to you in any sort of way? Was there any human connection there, or was it just them versus an enemy of the people who just had to be shouted at?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, that is a weird moment that was captured on camera, because I was kind of in shock. I was thinking, don't do anything to provoke them. Just, stay calm so that they don't hurt me or Joy. But I also was reporting and trying to understand, what do they want? What are their motivations? And some, as you heard, blamed us for the shooting of the woman inside of the Capitol. But others, as you ask, were saying, can't you understand our cause? Don't you understand what we want? can you agree that the media has contributed to this division? One man wanted us to, understand that people who adhere to an Antifa ideology aren't actually supporting unity, they're supporting division. So there were a lot of different motivations there. After that went on for a really long time, and after it kind of calmed down, this woman followed me and she said, "Don't you understand what the media is doing?" And I said, I appreciate your concerns and I reflect on it. I think one thing that's really important to note when you're watching the video of me and the video of police getting hurt and all of these people, it's shocking and upsetting, and it should be. And one of the reasons it's jarring to many audiences is because I'm a white woman from the Washington Post. And you don't normally see people like me enduring that kind of attack. But I am just a representation of a greater hostility and greater violent threats to large swaths of this country. And I'm talking about people who don't look like me. And so, Black Americans and Brown Americans and LGBTQ Americans have felt and faced this kind of threat, not in this form, but in different forms for a very, very long time. And so when Joe was mentioning this is the legacy of Trump, we need to think about what is the legacy of this country, because as you see the footage from the Capitol, there are Confederate flags everywhere. There are Betsy Ross flags. This is a flag that idolizes a time when women and Black and Brown Americans didn't hold power. And my colleagues at the Washington Post have done a brilliant video and graphics breakdown of all of the flags out there. And so for people trying to understand who is this, what is this, these are your neighbors, these are my neighbors, hopefully not, but they're Americans. And some believe the lie that the election was stolen. Some want to overthrow the government for whatever reason. Many are white supremacists, and they all took advantage of this moment. But this is not a division that started with Trump. He took advantage of it. But it's going to persist until we start looking at those flags and what they mean.
Kate, I don't know where you live, and I don't know who your neighbors are. And maybe your neighbors aren't white supremacists right around you, but I guarantee you there are people on your street who believe that this election was stolen and who quietly support what happened there. And I say that of all of us, because it's been shocking to me, the people close to me in my life who won't come out and say it to me, but I know what they're thinking. It's interesting. You were talking about how it was shocking to see a white woman like yourself being attacked like this by a mob. I'll tell you what else is shocking about the video that you got and so many other people got. It exposes a lie that we conservatives have been telling ourselves for 50 years. And this is the lie. And I heard it even before the election. People were saying to me, listen, if Trump wins, oh, my God, don't be in Washington because those people, the left, they're going to burn the city down. But the lie that we conservatives have always told ourselves is we don't have time to riot. We don't have time to march because we work. We go to work the next day. So if we don't like something, we're working. But those people, whoever those people are, whether it's the others, whether it's left-wing freaks, whether it's Antifa, whatever they say, the others are, they have jobs. So we have jobs. So we don't do that. This exposes that lie and shows that, yes, right-wing freaks, I will call them that, breaking it, right-wing criminals actually do march and they do riot and they do kill police officers.
Not only that, but this doesn't just happen in the U.S. Capitol. We had this attack that shook the nation here, but the people who were in the Capitol came from across the country. And these are tensions that were simmering, and not just simmering, but coming up all across the country, and they will go back to every state in this country. So, there's a lot of language, a lot of divisive language where we're othering other people. And I think you can't walk away from this and think, oh, I want to try to be friends with that person. But, labeling people as freaks and you can do whatever you want, but it's not entirely helpful to the situation, I think. And we just need to be asking, beyond the extremists, because there were plenty of extremists there. There were plenty of radicalized individuals. There were also thousands and thousands and thousands of families who didn't want violence, but still didn't understand that this should not be happening. And so, somehow we need to start to engage in conversations. And I will be criticized for that by my own friends to say, how can you possibly engage? But we need to improve, our reporting and education, et cetera.
Right. I did. I put a modifier on that freaks that broke into the Capitol and killed cops. I've got no problem. Maybe I won't call them that. I'll call them criminals. I'll call them traitors to America. But I did point out earlier this week, Kate, and it's a point that you were trying to make, and we showed the video. I did see people who were there that actually were shielding police officers as they were retreating. I saw people wearing MAGA hats actually pushing people away from lines of police officers who kept retreating. I think it was around the same area where you were. So no, you can't paint everybody that was there with a broad stroke. You certainly can't. But you look at those people around the Capitol, the people that infiltrated the Capitol, the people that killed police officers. Yes, I'll be more exact. Insurrectionists.
And there is a complicity to this,
traitors.
Right? Even if they were protecting a cop, or even if someone, I dropped my water bottle and someone looked down and picked it up and saw that it had a hole in it, and he was like, "Oh, that's a bummer," and he felt bad for me and handed me back my water bottle. So, even if there are more benign, quote unquote, actors within this crowd, they were all essentially supportive, and their energy, gave movement to this attack. And, so the other part of this too, is that this hostility, these threats, this violence was sanctioned, right? It was sanctioned by the President of the United States. And, and until very recently, it hasn't been condemned by members of the Republican Party. And so, I don't want to get into politics, but we have a very hard period of reflection where we need to grapple with this in our own families about what threats we're facing.
Yeah.
All right, Kate, thank you so much. Extraordinary work.
Thank you so much for your insight.
I really do appreciate it. And Mika.
Really good.
She's exactly right.
Yes.
We do have to engage, which I've spent my entire life doing in the conservative movement, the Republican Party, and the evangelical church. And I can tell you, we do have to stay engaged, but we also have to throw in jail people who committed insurrection against the United States of America. And they need to do their time for sedition, and we wish them the best. And hopefully when they come out of serving their 20-year sentence, which so many of those people should serve, we should sit down and have a conversation with them and stay engaged with them. But you know what? There has to be justice. If you believe there has to be justice in the streets of Portland and Seattle, like I did this summer, and you called for it nonstop, then there has to be justice in the United States Capitol, because it's one thing throwing stuff at a federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. It's another thing trying to kill the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House. We actually do treat those things differently under the law. So join me in supporting police officers. Join me in believing that blue lives do matter in the United States Capitol. Join me if you really are a conservative and demanding swift justice for every one of these rioters.
Ultimately, what you're talking about is getting back to the truth and valuing the truth, which has been devalued and things have been allowed to slide for 4 years, and here we are. Still ahead on Morning Joe, Senate confirmation hearings get underway today for some of President-elect Joe Biden's cabinet picks. But it seems most, if not all, won't be confirmed by Inauguration Day. Plus, we'll be joined by Senator Amy Klobuchar, who will have a leading role in Joe Biden's swearing-in ceremony tomorrow. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Hayes. These days I find it helpful to just take a step back from the day-to-day onslaught of news and take a broader look at the issues I haven't had time to cover on my TV show, All In. Everything from the legacy of racism in America to how community and creativity can flourish amidst a pandemic. I do it each week on my podcast, Why Is This Happening? And I'm joined by uniquely qualified guests like Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Nikole Hannah-Jones.
Progress does not mean justice or equality or that we are right. After 400 years of Black people being in this country, the time for marking incremental progress and patting ourselves on the back for that has been long over.
Author Rebecca Solnit.
How do we take care of each other in the context of not being able to physically be with each other in ordinary ways?
And many others who help me make sense of what's happening in our society and our world. I really enjoy our conversations. I hope you will too. So join me for new episodes every Tuesday. Just search for Why Is This Happening wherever you're listening right now and subscribe.
The number of people connected to the Capitol riots continues to rapidly grow. As of this morning, 124 people have been arrested for their roles in the insurgents. At least 97 people have been charged with federal crimes so far. That's expected to increase as a law enforcement official tells NBC News that there are still 330 open cases. Meanwhile, court documents reveal a Pennsylvania woman told a former romantic partner that she planned to sell a laptop that she stole from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office to Russian intelligence. The partner later turned her in.
Well, that's one way to make America great again, by sending
but the point is that they're following Trump's lead here.
Right.
And a New Jersey Army reservist with a security clearance and access to military supplies has also been charged in his alleged role in the riot.
So, Willie, is just the people involved cut across a large swath of American society. Like Kate was saying, these are, in many cases, our neighbors.
Jeez.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, in that crowd, they've been painted and sort of caricatured, but in that crowd were CEOs. In that crowd were gold medal winners from the American Olympic swimming team.
Yeah.
There were people who are not the caricature at all. There are people who truly believed this lie and were compelled to go to the Capitol. And I think part of the problem from a security standpoint, probably from a cultural standpoint, is they weren't taken seriously. I think reporters who watched these dark corners of the internet took them very seriously, but they thought, oh, these are just a bunch of people with flags and Trump hats on who are going to come to the Capitol and make some noise. No. They meant what they said. They meant what they said. And I think that'll be part of the lesson going forward as law enforcement, as the FBI, and as people covering these groups and these QAnon corners of the internet will take them quite literally based on what they did at the Capitol.
Once again, Joe, these corners of the internet, for example, if the New York Times or, I don't know, let's say the Washington Post printed anything that these people printed and put out on Facebook or Twitter, immediately there would be checks in place that what's going on here. But instead, this stuff flew and grew all over the internet, thanks to these platforms that think they have laws of their own.
Well, and Willie, it is so hilarious. I will say hilarious because these people are so extraordinarily stupid. I don't know really how they get out of bed in the morning, but there are right-wing bloggers, there are right-wing pro-Trumpist or anti-Trumpist people with podcasts that talk about this is what Nazi Germany was like if you try to put some regulations on Facebook, if you try to put some regulations on Twitter. No, these are companies that operate in the free market. First of all, they can make the choices they choose, just like we do. I make the choice. You make the choice. Mika makes the choice on who we allow on our airwaves and who we don't. Yep. That's one part of it. The second part of it is And this is what I hate so much about Section 230 that grants just full immunity to people. Go, oh, they're third parties. We can't control. What can we do to the third parties?
Yeah, they're having a big rally at the Capitol and they want to kill people and take down.
So they killed people. So they're
saying
liars. So they destroy democracy. It's third parties. You can't sue us for that. Listen, that's like us saying that we could get a tape. It's funny how old I am. I'm holding a videotape right now.
Oh, my God.
It's not even a VHS. No, it's a beta.
Oh, beta.
But somebody could click and send us a video. And it could, by their standards, it could lie about anybody. It could accuse anybody of murder. It could accuse anybody of rape. It could accuse anybody of anything.
And we roll
And we could just roll them. All day. Here's a tape of somebody beating up somebody. Here's a tape of somebody stabbing somebody. Here, we could do that under the Facebook standard, under the Twitter standard, right? And they couldn't do anything to us. Oh, but wait a second. We actually have regulations that are put on us that don't allow us to do that. It's called slander. It's called libel. This is, again, the widespread immunity for Facebook,
where'd they get
Twitter,
their information,
and social media is so outrageous. And that is, as we've been saying for years, where over 50% of Americans get their news.
Yeah, and it's a breeding ground for what happened on January 6th. The argument for years has been that we're just sort of a town square. We open the gate, we let the people in. We're not in charge of what happens once they're inside the party. Well, that stopped on January the 6th. And I think the question that you were asking earlier, Mika, is a good one, which is, will this continue now? Was this just an isolated event where these social media companies so panicked by what they saw in January 6th and suddenly realized that a lot of it was fomented on their platforms, that they did something about this, but will they continue to do it in the, 30 hours from now when President Trump is out of office? Let's ask former FBI special agent and MSNBC contributor Clint Watts and New York Times reporter and MSNBC national security analyst Michael Schmidt. Guys, good morning. Clint, let me start with you. What is, do you think, the new permanent posture from these social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter? And do you actually believe it is permanent?
I don't think it's permanent, Willie. It's pretty fluid. It really is based on the wins in Capitol Hill. And I think while January 6th was awful and it was definitely a striking point for those companies, 24 hours before that, 2 Democrats from Georgia were elected to the Senate. And so that really tipped the balance in terms of what is going to be interpreted as violent or not violent, who should be policed. You know, in Silicon Valley, they call it gaining the ref, meaning whoever's in charge yells at them about what they want policed on social media. I think by and large, until that line is defined, they're going to go whatever direction the majority is in. What's fascinating already, though, is how it has changed the environment of social media. I don't know if you can feel it, but I can feel it when I'm on Twitter today, that it is noticeably different without President Trump on there. The conversation has changed in a very different way. But this has pushed people to these fringe platforms, probably about 10 to a dozen of them. The removal of Parler has sent them sort of scurrying in all sorts of directions on the internet. And for the most extreme, it sent them kind of into dark, direct messaging platforms and closed forums. So that's going to be a bigger challenge for law enforcement in the coming months as they try and preempt this. These folks that showed up at the Capitol, they're most extreme members. If not arrested, they're not going away and have lots of supporters around the country.
Clint, what about President Trump, who will, as of tomorrow, be out of office? Will he have a platform? Will he have a place to direct people the way he's been directing them for the last 5.5 years?
Willie, I'd be shocked if he did not merge with one of these fringe sort of platforms that's out there or quickly try to establish his own. That would be an interesting game he could play where he tries to essentially force the U.S. government or regulation to police him in his speech and moderate it. Imagine a former president who's been so prolific saying, OK, you policed my free speech. He could really rally people to their cause. So I think that's a very plausible scenario that we'll see unfold in 2021.
Hey,
Jonathan
Michael,
Lemire.
it's Jonathan Lemire. Good morning. Good to see you. Oh, there we go. Hey, Mike, wanted to ask you about the latest on the pardons. I know you've been reporting extensively on where the president is on this and those he's considering. And we were talking earlier that it does look like he's shying away from trying to self-pardon or pardon some of his immediate family, but there are quite a bit of names on the list. I know plenty of decisions still to be made. Can you give us an update as to where things stand on these pardons and when we should expect them? Is this something later tonight? Are we going to get them tomorrow morning, literally as Air Force One takes off for Florida?
So, look, the president has gone back and forth over the past few weeks a lot about pardons, particularly about himself and about his family members, as you were saying, about Rudy Giuliani, currently in sort of a posture of not doing the self-pardon or the pardons for his children. Obviously, like any decision in Trump world, nothing is done until it's done. But indeed, this is something that obviously has to get done by noon on Wednesday. There is still another batch of pardons and commutations. I guess I'll call from the sort of regular bucket of Trump pardons and commutations to come. Remember, his use of clemency is extraordinarily different than past presidents. So the president looking at a range of individuals, the most interesting one in my mind being Sheldon Silver, the former Speaker of the New York State Legislature. Silver was a Democrat, but the case has a larger significance because it was brought by the office, the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutors in Manhattan, an office that that investigated the president, and the president has sought to undermine. As I reported over the weekend, the president's former lawyer, John Dowd, had told convicts who had been prosecuted by that office that their cases would be more favorably looked upon for pardons and commutations simply because they had been investigated by them. Now, Dowd had worked as the president's lawyer for a little bit less than a year before he quit. He had gone out to try and represent people who were looking to lobby the president for pardons and commutations. And he was basically saying to them, based on his knowledge working as the president's lawyer, that they would look favorably because they were investigated by the same people who investigated the president.
Gene Robinson.
Clint, I have a question for you, and it's about how you view the threat matrix now, as not just for Inauguration Day, but beyond. These people who sack the Capitol, those who won't spend the next few years in prison, and I hope quite a few of them do, won't go away. And so how do you see the threats to officials, including soon-to-be President Biden and Vice President Harris and others, and other officials going forward?
Gina, it's really fascinating. There's kind of three different batches that you can look at, and then there's varying degrees of severity. One is this sort of loosely organized structure, and you have a more violent and a less violent. The more violent are what is known as the accelerationists. Boogaloo boys are in there, and they're looking to start a second civil war. That's who I worry about, because oftentimes that's one or two people, a small cell. They are moving quickly to set off a deliberate violent act. They think there'll be like a chain reaction. Separately, there's the QAnon adherents that are overcommitted, meaning they really believe in this stuff and they think they need to take it now. So I think the worry over the next 36 hours is, if not now, then when? When would they start to move toward those? Separately, then you can look at these militia groups that are out there, which we saw many there. You had a Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3 Percenters. They have mostly told their people to stand down. The question is, would they have people that are overly committed in certain sects? Because this is a nationwide movement oftentimes with these groups. And then the last is the white supremacists. They've really been emboldened by the president in his term. When we look forward, I don't expect a major issue. Most of the protests we've seen and mobilizations over the weekend have been pretty light. But I'm very worried about the summer and fall of 2021. Many of these people are super committed, and the one thing that has held them back is a lack of targets. When the pandemic ends, there will be more mass gatherings. So that's when I'm worried about mass shootings, bombings, and the worst of this is the attempted or assassination of certain political leaders. We saw them talking about Nancy Pelosi there when they stormed the Capitol.
Michael Schmidt and Clint Watts, thank you both very much for being on this morning. Coming up, a concerning new warning from the FBI that some QAnon followers have discussed posing as National Guard members in order to infiltrate tomorrow's inauguration. Plus, as Joe Biden prepares to take office, one of his first priorities will be overhauling immigration. We'll dig into his plans for his first day as president. Morning Joe is coming right back.
Hi, it's MSNBC's Hayes Brown. You know, these days there's just so much news to wrap your head around, it's challenging to get a deeper understanding of things. So every morning, go beyond the headlines with MSNBC Daily. It features written perspectives from people you know and trust, including Trymaine Lee, Mehdi Hasan, Liz Plank, and Frank Figliuzzi. They'll take you inside the most important issues of our times. Issues like systemic racism, domestic terrorism, and how we can bridge our political divide. Plus, you'll get a fresh take every morning from me. Start your day with MSNBC Daily at msnbc.com.